Hi, my name is Pastor Jesse Barrett, and thank you for being here for another episode of Half and Half. It's an episode for ladies. It's a video for ladies, a series designed for ladies. And Half and Half really was kind of an inspiration for my wife. She likes half and half in her coffee, and that made me think about how I could use a simple video to be an encouragement to women in the sense that I want to take half an hour or less, that's the first half, and spend that time with our better halves. That's the second half in that funny phrase, half and half. So this is a half and half session with you ladies this morning. And I just so privileged to be able to speak into your lives. And thank you for taking a little bit of time to listen to me, to be able to have a video that may be a blessing to you. Again, this is just a resource. I count it a great privilege and honor to be able to speak to you in this way. As you remember from the last video, I just wanted to provide you with some resources, some information, and some encouragement to you ladies out there. You're living in a very difficult time period. Every generation has their thing. I know I keep kind of saying that across every video that I make, but it's so true. Every generation's got their thing. We're not young ladies, relatively speaking, okay? We're not young ladies living in the Great Depression, for example. You may have grown up in the Great Depression, and if you had grown up in the Great Depression, then you would have understood economic hardship. Okay, that's another group of women may have gone through the world wars or a major war where the love of your life was sent to war. And many women are connecting together for encouragement to get through the hard trial of either losing a loved one or even being a mother who loses a child or multiple children due to war. The time and age that we live in right now is difficult for us, for every woman out there. We live in a time period where your kids are out of school and in home for a longer period of time than they normally would have. Whatever weaknesses you may have as a parent or even as a educator are likely to be on display. Okay? I don't know how else to say that, but the reality is during this time we're all growing and we're all starting at a place of ground zero, if you will. We're all trying to cope and deal with life. We're trying to be more educated. We're trying to learn how to be more loving and more patient. We're trying to win the hearts and minds of our children over to the things of the Lord and also keep them on track with things of education and good behavior and those type of things. And so in as much as another generation may have dealt with seeing their children go hungry, or another generation may have dealt with loss, personal loss from a family member during war and that type of thing, we are under another stressor. The stressor of the home is a very complicated, very difficult place to be in the sense that you've never been here before. This is brand new. For some of you, you may have experienced a loss in the family due to COVID-19, which itself is hard. But but this situation is hard because you're isolated. You're with your kids more. Your kids are leaning on you more for direction and for encouragement. And so my heart really is to spend this time giving you some encouragement, some resources, some, I don't know, just a breath of fresh air, hopefully, for you to be able to just breathe in deeply and think about what other resources are available to you and lead you to the Lord, maybe in a more deeper way, with the people that He has already inspired to give you good, sound theology and good, sound resources. Okay, so with that being said, just like last time, I do want to present to you a few resources. The first one I want to talk about today is my wife and I. Now, I would really have liked to have Margot come on and speak to you. Margot, as you know, is working like some of you women are as well. And so rather than waiting for a good time for her to create this video with me, I thought I'd just go ahead and speak to you just very shortly about some of our background and our history. Perhaps you've heard of me in a sermon or maybe in a one-on-one, maybe over coffee as friends and maybe inside your own home. Margot and I had the privilege and honor of working at Christ's Home for Children, and we had the privilege of being in a residential style group home. Now, in that style of group home, we were called teaching parents. The kids called us Uncle Jesse and Aunt Margot. For those kids, even though they knew that we weren't their parents, we structured the home as if we were their parents, and we were parenting them along the way and how to live a good and godly life, a life that was well behaved, number one, but also thinking about God, number two. So in that experience, we had lots of crazy experiences. So some of the more positive experiences were just seeing kids blossom, seeing them grow from places of despair and depression to a place of joy and happiness, to a place of hope, a place where they got to think about going to another family or go to a family that was a distant relative of theirs. And to this day, I'll never forget the day with one of our boys was moving on to be with another family. We really loved that boy. And I remember Margot and I were standing out on the sidewalk, and the boy was walking himself to the car where his family members were there to greet him. And he turned back and he said, "Thank you for taking good care of me." And Margot and I just melted. We just started crying because we really did love that boy, and we tried to love on him well, and we wanted to see him successful. We were just so happy to see him moving on to a positive place. And I know from a parent standpoint, you want to see your kids thrive. You want to see them look back at your parenting and say, you know what, yeah, mom and dad, you may not have been perfect, but thank you so much for what you did and for how hard that you tried and for how much you loved me and took care of me and did all these great things for me. So, with that as an inspiration for us, regardless of where you find yourself at right now, perhaps even in your own home or with the kids and their personalities and all that type of stuff, we always got to be keeping our eyes up, and we got to be thinking about bringing them into a place that's a healthy environment, making our homes a healthy environment, so that they can grow and so that they can thrive as adults someday. Now, we did have some very horrible, hard times at the group home. There were times when my daughter was young. My daughter's name is Midori. She was still in the years where we started calculating the kid's age in months. She was 10 months or 14 months old or whatever the case may be. And there were times at the group home where behavior got so out of control, I literally had to lock up my wife and daughter behind a locked door and brought the house back under control before I would let them back out again. I've had times where I have had to take care of a child who was chasing after another child with a butcher's knife and a rolling pin. I've had kids standing on tables and swinging off lights, if you will. I have had very difficult times in parenting, and I can really relate to families out there who are struggling, maybe not in the sense that they've always struggled, but maybe families out there that are struggling right now because of the time that they're spending with each other, and everybody is struggling, everybody is hurting, and everybody is frustrated, and everybody is angry during this COVID-19 time. So the reality is can understand how that feels. For us, Margot and I, we remember some things about that group home experience. One of the things that we remember is the rule that we used to call the 4-to-1 rule. And we don't do it perfectly, but we think about it a lot. We should be giving positive feedback to our kids 4 times for every 1 negative piece of feedback, if you will. So we definitely don't want our kids to grow up in a home where it's negative, 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 and a positive thrown in when we feel like it. No, it should be positive, 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 and okay, here's a corrective piece where you need to go. If you find yourself going down the rabbit trail of criticism and frustration and anger, and everything that you're saying and everything that you're responding to is negative, 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 I think you need to put the kids in the yard for a little bit, let them play, take a couple of deep breaths, and bring yourself back under control and think about how you can turn the situation that you're going through today into a positive. Think about 4 positive things that you can say to each child before you say the next negative thing. Okay, and I don't necessarily mean negative like, obviously, I don't think there's any mother out there who's saying, oh, you're an idiot. Just negative in the sense that, hey, this is wrong, and I need to tell you why this is wrong. Versus, hey, what a great thing that you just did. Great job. And those things can be very small. It doesn't take very much to encourage your kid. It just does take you actually saying it. Thank you so much for how hard you worked on those dishes. Thank you so much for how hard you tried brushing off the grease off of that pan. Thank you for going above and beyond for getting this drink for me so I didn't have to get up off the couch. Anything like that. Okay, you gotta put those things into your kids. You gotta keep pushing and pushing and pushing to tell yourself to be positive, be positive, be positive, be positive before you let yourself get to that place where corrective action is necessary. Okay, so that'd be a little bit about Margot and I. That'd be one piece of feedback, one piece of instruction, one maybe idea that came out of that residential style group home, heavily medicated, difficult trials with children who were from broken homes and trying to get through life. That's just one small piece, just that testimony that I like to give to you from my own personal life. All right. The second resource that I'd like to talk to you about is something that we also found very helpful at the group home. And sometimes Margaret and I think about this as we parent our own kids who are now 13 and 12. And that is, what is the child's developmental norms for their age group? What is the child's developmental norms for their age? Now, there are resources about this on the internet. And just for the sake of this video, rather than trying to move my camera and shift it and show you all these things, I'm going to read you a portion off of my computer about the developmental milestones for children. And then underneath the video in the description box, you can hit like see more, I think it is underneath the description box. And I'll put the link in there for you to be able to click it and see what the developmental norm is for a child. Okay, so let me give it to you this way off my computer screen. Again, forgive me for reading here. For young teens, let's say 12 to 14 years of age, I'm using this age group because that's where my kids are right now. Under developmental milestones, it says, this is a time of many physical, mental, emotional, and social changes. Would you say that's true? That's probably even more true today than it's ever been, right? Social changes. All right. So again, let's just realize the point that as a 12 to 14-year-old in a perfect world, quote unquote, they're already dealing with this. And now that you are in an imperfect situation, they're dealing with it even more. Okay. So for a 12 to 14-year-old, this is a time of many physical, mental, emotional, and social changes. Hormones change as puberty begins. Most boys grow facial and pubic hair and their voices deepen. Most girls grow pubic hair and breasts and start their period. They might be worried about these changes and how they are looked at by others. This also will be a time when your teen might face peer pressure to use alcohol, tobacco products, and drugs, and even to have sex. And I hate to say it, but that is very true in the day and age that we live in. Other challenges can be eating disorders, depression. So, again, depression in this age group in a perfect world, naturally, developmentally normal thing would be for your 12 to 14-year-old to struggle with depression. And yet, because of COVID-19, the likelihood is that they could be even more depressed. Okay, so again, you have to understand this about your 12 to 14-year-old right now. Okay, so other challenges may be eating disorders, depression, and family problems. And so again, family problems is something that's also circulating right now just because you're home more. All right. At this age, teens make more of their own choices about friends, sports, studying, and school. They become more independent with their own personality and interests, although parents are still very important. So here's some information about how young teens develop. Emotional and social change. Children in this age group might show more concern about body image, looks, and clothes, focus on themselves, going back and forth between high expectations and lack of confidence, experience more moodiness, show more interest in and influenced by a peer group, express less affection toward parents. So acknowledge that. Your 12 to 14-year-old will experience less affection toward parents, sometimes might even seem rude or short-tempered. They feel stress from more challenging schoolwork. They develop eating problems. They feel a lot of sadness or depression, which can lead to poor grades at school, alcohol or drug use, unsafe sex, and other problems. Thinking and learning, okay? Children in this age group might have more ability for complex thought, be better able to express feelings through talking, and develop a stronger sense of right and wrong. Now, from a personal standpoint there, my daughter the other day confided in us by a something that she wrote, and it was very powerful. She needed to express herself through talking, and what a beautiful moment that was for her. We need to praise her for that. Ladies, you don't want to lose your children in the sense that they don't want to talk to you. Don't lose that, okay? Positive parenting tips. So they give you a list of possible parenting tips. Following are some things that you as a parent can do to help your child during this time. Be honest and direct with your teen when talking about sensitive subjects such as drugs, drinking, smoke, and sex. Meet and get to know your teen friends. Show an interest in your teen's school life. Help your teen make healthy choices while encouraging him to make his own decisions. Respect your teen's opinions and take into account her thoughts and feelings. It's important that she knows you are listening to her. How many times has your 12 to 14-year-old come up to you and say, hey, Mom, Dad, can you read this story? Or can you talk to me about this or that? I'm talking to myself here, but to you as well. Those are the times. You've got to take those moments, okay? Where was I? When there is a conflict, be clear about goals and expectations like getting good grades, keeping things clean, and showing respect. You need to be clear about those things. But allow your teen input on how to reach those goals, like how and when to study or clean. For Margot and I, family meetings are a serious time. We try to do family meetings as often as we think is necessary. I'm not going to say it's every week. Sometimes it is. It's probably more in the tune of at least once a month, if thinking about the year in general. We sit down together and we say, hey, this is what's going on. This is unacceptable. We want your input on how to resolve this problem. What are some things that we can put in place to make sure that these type of things don't continue to happen, because frankly, these are not okay actions, and we will start talking through those things. All right. So that's another resource for you. Again, it'll be in the description box as a link. Feel free to click on that. There is other age groups listed there. There's age groups for all the way back from infants, and obviously for infants, we're not necessarily talking about behavior so much as we're just talking about what is normal for how they develop, what things you should be looking for, when do they start walking or eating or whatever the case may be, talking. But it takes you right up through toddlers, preschoolers, middle schoolers, middle childhood, 9 through 11, and even teenagers right through 15 to 17 years old. So those are all good resources for you out there. All right. Resource number 3. All right. I mentioned this book once before in another video. I'm mentioning it again. It's called Shepherding a Child's Heart by this man named Ted Tripp. I love this book. I love this man. I think that he's got it right. I think that he's proven it biblically that you can do parenting biblically, and you can do it in a way that encourages growth in your children at a spiritual level. So I want you to read this book, and I only have 1 or 2 of these at the church, but ladies, I really want you to pick it up. Now, I understand that because of the day and age we live in, reading is difficult. Maybe you don't have find time to read. I would encourage you to work on your schedule to find time to read. But if you can't find time to read, then I would encourage you to go on YouTube and you put in Ted Tripp, TEDDTRIPP, okay? And he's got some videos in there that have been done at other churches. I'm not saying that I agree with every church that he has talked to, but I appreciate the fact that he is talking to Christians in general. Good Q&As, good topics about this book, good ways of understanding how to parent in a biblical format. You need to go on YouTube, Ted Tripp. That is a wonderful resource for you, okay? So I would encourage you to please go check that out. Just a little bit of background on Ted Tripp. He is a doctor, Dr. Ted Tripp. He's an author, conference speaker, and elder at Grace Fellowship Church in Hazleton, PA. He has authored this book, Shepherding a Child's Heart, and with his wife Margie, another book called Instructing a Child's Heart. Both are wonderful, 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 wonderful. Have I said that enough? Wonderful books. All right. Please, I would count everything that this man says as good information. Okay. I want to give you, as we spend the last few minutes just reading the introduction out of this book. And again, forgive me for reading, but I think the introduction of this book is paramount. It's huge. So let me read it to you. Okay. Introduction. Jennifer was failing to do her homework. Her teacher called Jennifer's folks to solicit help. They could not help. 12-year-old Jennifer would not obey them. Jennifer was not under their authority. They hoped the school would provide the direction and motivation that they had not been able to provide for their daughter. This story is not unusual. By age 10 to 12, scores of children have already left home, so to speak. I am not referring to the tragic Times Square kids in New York City of your community. I refer to scores of children who, by the age of 10 to 12, have effectively left mom or dad as an authority or reference point for their lives. Our culture has lost its way with respect to parenting. We are a rudderless ship without a compass. We lack both a sense of direction and the capacity to direct ourselves. How has this happened? Several problems have converged at this intersection in our time and culture. Many people have children, but do not want to be parents. Our culture has convinced them that they need to quench their personal thirst for fulfillment. In a self-absorbed culture, children are a clear liability. And again, I would say that that's true just generically speaking because of the abortion rate and stuff. Children can get in the way of our career path, if you will. And so we abort our children. Similarly, other things happen like that. And if you don't think that's true, maybe even in your own personal home, well, how consumed are you with work and how does that impact your children? Many times children are just getting in the way of what we're trying to do in the home. Okay, we don't want to parent our children sometimes. We just want to continue down the path of our career, and that gets in the way. Children get in the way of children sometimes get in the way of our career, and we don't want to parent our children. Okay, so this is just another example. Thus, parents spend minimal time with their children. The notion of quality time is more attractive than the old idea of quantity time. Today's parents are part of the generation that threw off their authority. The racial and anti-war protests of the 1960s powerfully shaped their ideas. The protest movement took on the establishment. It changed the way we think about authority and the rights of the individual. As a result, it is no longer culturally acceptable for dad to be the boss at home. Mom doesn't obediently do what dad says, or at least pretends she does. Dad, for his part, no longer lives in fear of the boss or being fired through caprice. Yesterday's bosses used authority to accomplish their goals. Today's bosses use bonuses and incentives. That's true. What is my point? Simply this. Children raised in the climate no longer sit in neat rows in school. They no longer ask permission to speak. They no longer fear the consequences of talking back to their parents. They do not accept submissive role in life. Forgive me for my clock going off. How does that bear on parenting? How does that bear on parenting? The old ways of parenting no longer work. Old authoritarian ways are ineffective, but we do not know any new ways to do the job. The church borrowed the old, "you listen to me, kid, or I'll cuff you" method of raising children. It seemed to work. Children seemed to obey. They were extremely submissive. They were externally submissive. This method no longer works as well because our culture no longer responds to authority as it did a generation ago. We lament the passing of this way of rearing children because we miss its simplicity. I fear, however, we have overlooked its unbiblical methods and goals. Today's parents are frustrated and confused. Children don't act like they should, and parents don't understand why. Many have concluded the job is impossible. Some simply turn away in frustration. Others keep trying to make the old 1950s John Way approach work. Meanwhile, a generation of children are being wasted. Our evangelical culture is nearly as lost as the society is at large. We are losing our children. Parents of little children live in mortal fear of adolescence. Parents of teens continually remind them that their day is coming. When I had 3 teenage children, people would console me. The expectation is that the problems grow with children. The purpose of this book is to assert that the situation is not hopeless. You can raise children in godly ways at the end of the 20th century. This book is dating itself just a little bit, okay? You will need not, indeed, you dare not, cave in, concluding that the task is impossible. Experience may tell you failure is inevitable, but experience is an unsafe guide. The only safe guide is the Bible. It is the revelation of a God who has infinite knowledge and can therefore give you absolute truth. God has given you a revelation that is robust and complete. It presents an accurate and comprehensive picture of children, parents, family life, values, training, nurture, discipline, all you need to be equipped for the task of parenting. God's ways have not proved inadequate. They are simply untried. The church mirrors the problems of the culture because we weren't doing biblical parenting in the previous generation. We were just doing what worked. Unfortunately, we are still trying to do it, even though, because of changes in our culture, it no longer works. Let me overview a biblical vision for the parenting task. The parenting task is multifaceted. It involves being authorities who are kind, shepherding your children to understand themselves in God's world, and keeping the gospel in clear view so your children can internalize the good news and someday live in mutuality with you as people under God. Now, God calls his creatures to live under authority. He is our authority and has vested authority in people within the institutions he has established, both home, church, state, and business. And so you must not be embarrassed to be authorities for your children. You exercise authority as God's agent. You may not direct your children for your own agenda or convenience. You must direct your children on God's behalf for their good. And I'll just stop right there. That's just a small taste of this book, but the reality I think is so true. We have the responsibility to teach our children and shepherd our children in a way of mutuality, showing them that the authority really is in the Bible. And I, as a parent, put myself under the authority of a Bible, and you, as a child, also need to come under the authority of the Bible. We do all of these things under the authority of Christ. And so when we stay there in a layer of mutuality, of we're both trying to obey God well, we're much better off at parenting our children because we're doing it in a more biblical way. Now, the rest of the book goes on with more information about that. Again, I would really encourage you to stop by my office and pick it up. Again, I'm here every morning, 7 a.m. to 12 at least, Monday through Saturday, really. Saturday is the day that I'm really kind of focused in on God's Word, but Monday through Friday would definitely be perfectly great days for you to stop by and grab this book, all right? With that being said, I'm up to my 30 minutes, and I just want to say that I've been very shy to talk about parenting. I want to be very humble. Margot and I believe that we're not perfect parents. We understand that we're not perfect parents, but I just wanted to give you some resources that Margot and I have found helpful, and I pray that it helps you. So God bless you, ladies. I hope that you have a great week with your families. God bless you.